This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellow Wall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 477 of the Yellow Wall Pod. I'm your host, Chef Motzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund winning their home leg 1-0 against PSG in the Champions League semi-final. For all that and more, joins me Lars Pollmann. Hello Lars, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, judging by your introduction, I'm not sure how much more there's going to be, because obviously the Bundesliga can now be declared dead for Dortmund, but I'm fine. How are you?
Doing well. Obviously, as you said, Bundesliga can be declared dead, but that is, I guess, already the end more part. But no, honestly, Lars, how surprised are you that we're now sitting here with Dortmund taking a 1-0 advantage into a Champions League final, or into a Champions League semi-final? Getting ahead of myself a little bit, but just the fact that Dortmund managed to win a Champions League final overall.
It's still a semi-final. You just got ahead of yourself again. I don't know that I'm hugely surprised. I mean, it depends on when you ask the question, I guess. If it's in late August or whenever the groups were drawn, then yeah, I suppose I wouldn't have pegged Dortmund to make the kind of run they have made. But if you had asked me Wednesday, an hour ahead of kickoff, will they beat PSG 1-0? Yeah, why not? I mean, we've seen Dortmund play PSG quite a few times now. I think we've seen quite a few bad games, especially at Paris, which is why I'm still hesitant to make the same leaps mentally as you have, Stefan. But we've also seen that Dortmund at home are at least on par with that sort of team, which I wouldn't necessarily say that PSG are among the 4 best teams in Europe, and Dortmund definitely aren't. It's just the way things have shaken out in the Champions League this season. So I'm not surprised that they won this game. I guess it could have been a draw going by quality of chances, because obviously PSG had hit the post twice, but basically in the same sequence, so we shouldn't count that as 2 goals missed necessarily. But they had a couple of other chances where Kobel did well, or where the Dortmund had a good block in the end, and obviously Dortmund also missed a volley from Füllkrug, the volley from Sabitzer,
Reus header, the Brandt chance.
Reus header, Füllkrug had a diving header, Brandt was blocked once. So, to be honest, I didn't watch too much of the Bayern versus Real game, but it seems like that was kind of a dead rubber, but they had 4 goals, and then Dortmund and PSG had the glorious chaos kind of game and only 1 goal. So maybe that comes in the second leg, but surprise no. I think Dortmund have shown in the Champions League they can set up well against these teams that have more individual quality, especially at home. So if I'm the eternal pessimist on this panel, I would say that having the home leg first is a huge disadvantage for Dortmund, but obviously that's a bridge we have to cross next week.
That's what Matthias said in the preview as well, and I very much agree. If Dortmund had the home leg as a second leg, I think their chances would increase quite significantly of making it through. I don't know how you overall felt about how PSG played, but to me, I was a bit reminded of the Dortmund win in Munich, where it felt to me a bit like Bayern then were mailing it in somehow, because in the past Bayern usually played Dortmund way more aggressive, and especially in the beginning of the game, I was surprised how much space Riasson, for example, had on the right side, how isolated Sancho was against Mendes, and obviously in the first, 5 to 10 minutes, Sancho felt a little bit too shy to really take on the opposition. But obviously now, as we know, with the hindsight, he had 12 take-ons, and I think he equaled Messi's record, or something that hasn't happened since Messi did it in 2008 in the Champions League. So obviously a massive performance. But to come back to my question, Lars, I really have a hard time saying, because I'm obviously not an expert on what PSG do regularly, but I don't know if they mailed it in, or if this is just how good they are, or if they are just hoping, a close result like this is good enough for them to take home to Paris and then go from there.
I mean, obviously this is post-game analysis that's very much colored by them not scoring one of their opportunities, because, as I said, it could easily have been a draw, and that would have been a wonderful result for PSG. I kind of want to go back to the start, as it were, with them. A lot of the discussion ahead of the semi-finals is how has the European elite of clubs allowed a side as poor as Dortmund to make it into the semi-finals this year, with regards to Dortmund's obviously poor Bundesliga form. But if we remember that PSG were almost eliminated from the group stage if it wasn't for an absolutely catastrophic handball call against Newcastle, which, I mean, PSG might have been out in the group stage then. They also lost the first leg against Barca at home, if memory serves. And then in the second leg went a goal down again, but then Barca had their best defender thrown off the pitch with a red card. Obviously, I think that was the correct decision, but it's still, let's say it was an 85% correct decision, so there will have been situations in the past where that is a yellow card and a stern talking to. So it's not like PSG have been the hot butter through knife in the Champions League this season, so it's not necessarily a surprise to me that away from home in a semi-final they struggle a little bit. And again, as I said, they still created a few chances. They still have so much individual quality with not only Mbappé, but obviously him first and foremost. But I thought Vitinha did well again. Zaire Emery was a bit more quiet than in the group stages against Dortmund. The thing I don't understand with PSG, and I think it's one of those things which Luis Enrique is a bit stubborn about, is still trying Mbappé in the center. He's not a center forward. He doesn't like to play center forward. It's the one thing that I'm curious to see when he goes to Real Madrid, which I think is pretty much guaranteed at this point. How does he play next to Vinicius? Because Mbappé doesn't like playing in the middle, and Luis Enrique has tried to turn him into more of an out-and-out striker this season. Whenever I've seen that, it hasn't really worked. So I don't know if Bradley Barcola, the left wing for PSG, is so good that you have to move Mbappé aside. I don't know if it's about Mbappé leaving in the summer and Luis Enrique wanting to, I don't know, establish his authority already or whatever. But to me, when you have Kylian Mbappé, arguably one of the 3 best players in the world, maybe let's say 5 or 10, I think that's splitting hairs basically. I would basically do whatever he wants to make him comfortable and have all his quality on show every time. And for one reason or the other, they aren't doing it. I was also, because I don't watch PSG basically ever, because Liga is it's not particularly interesting to me, surprised at what they turned Randal Kolo-Muani into, because when we remember how good he looked in the Bundesliga for Eintracht Frankfurt, and also the kind of World Cup he had as a sort of super sub, I guess, which then turned to more of a starting role during the tournament. I don't see the same player. So for all the individual quality that they have been able to buy over the years, with more than $1 billion now, obviously, in transfer fees, there's still a lot of question marks about them to me. So I still think PSG are going to go through, to cut a long story short. But it's not surprising to see them have a few issues in a semi-final, even if it's against lowly Dortmund, paraphrasing, obviously, international journalists who have been talking smack about Dortmund a little bit.
Yeah, we've already discussed the chances both teams had a little bit, and I feel like if you I haven't looked at expected goals or just from what I've seen, I felt like Dortmund actually deserved to win this game, and obviously finishing variancy, match luck, etc., this can finish 3-0 for either team. It can be a 3-3 draw, something crazy that Dortmund have a 1-0 lead. I think suits them pretty well though overall. But what in your book did Dortmund do as a collective really well for them to deserve this lead, at least in my book?
I think it's sometimes easy to break it down like that, but it was just work rate to me. They ran 10 kilometers more than PSG, despite the disparity in possession not being crazy high. I think PSG had like 56 or something % of the ball, which, you know, is within the margin of reason, I would say. And still Dortmund outran them by 10 kilometers. I think Karim Adeyemi, never in his life has gotten so much applause on the spot for tracking back, for intervening against Hakimi, and at times Dembele. The same for the most part. I think Sancho was very diligent in helping out Rierson against Barcola and at times Mbappe. Even Emre Can, much maligned on this podcast with good reason, but I think this is the kind of game that he's very useful for because he throws his body into it. He's the one who makes the clever foul to break up the rhythm of the opponent from time to time. And the what little they allowed through over the wings or whatever usually found a good master in Hummels and Schlotterbeck, who continued their excellence in the Champions League this season. And because it's still a very good opponent individually, obviously you also have to rely on Gregor Kobel from time to time. So I think this was their fifth clean sheet during this Champions League campaign, which is the most among all teams obviously left in the competition.
Do they have 5 clean sheets in the Bundesliga?
I'm sure they have. I actually didn't look it up. I'm pretty sure they do. But still, I mean, in the Bundesliga, they've conceded, I think, 39 goals this season in 31 games. So, you know, the aim is always maybe keep it below 1 per game. And if that doesn't happen, at least keep it below 40, which I think we probably agree is not going to happen with these 3 games that are basically meaningless for Dortmund. And in the Champions League, they've kept 5 clean sheets from, 11 games. I mean, that speaks for itself. And I basically could spend like half an hour just waxing poetic on Hummels and Schlotterbeck this season in the Champions League. I think especially Hummels, given, you know, age and a bit of a lack of foot speed and all that. I think he's having a Champions League campaign for the ages. And if Dortmund make it to the final, it's largely down to that defensive core, I think, which is very unusual for to be said about a Dortmund team.
Yeah, it is actually crazy how good this defensive block is, and we all know that Mats Hummels obviously gambles a lot, that he moves forward quite a lot, and the tackles he had relatively far up the field, leaving his line. I think more often than not, he has been absolutely perfect on that in this Champions League season, and that deserves to be commended. I mean, the one where he absolutely sends Mbappe to the ground, I think it's even relatively close to the halfway line, if not in the opposition half. Almost iconic to me. But honestly, I'm right there with you. I mean, and Schlotterbeck struggled quite a bit this season, and he has managed to really become more consistent. It's an amazing center-back pairing right now. Mats Hummels and Schlotterbeck both have incredible passing capabilities, and I think, especially in the Champions League, this is a bit of a cheat code, to be honest. And Dortmund, I don't think often enough utilize that playmaking capability from that line, but in the Champions League they do it way more often. And obviously, the assist by Schlotterbeck to Füllkrug was just a perfect pass. So yeah, I'm right there with you when it comes to tackling, the timing. Schlotterbeck, I think, had a huge one on Dembele in the box, where when he gets it wrong, it's an instant penalty. I'm just really happy with this core of defense, and I mean, Rierson and Madsen, I think deserve a shout out too, because without either, I don't think Dortmund have much of a chance. And the fact that Martin picked up a yellow booking relatively early in the game, still in the first half, and played through almost the entire 90 minutes, was also a real credit to him, and the way Dortmund defended, how they doubled the opponents on the wing. And obviously Martin is not the very best defender, and is not going to shut everything down on his side, but he also has, just like Ryerson, a lot of skills on the ball, which really helps Dortmund, because more often than not, I think, especially in build-up play, it's about not losing possession in critical areas. And I think the fullback play in the build-up play is also very important for that. So both sides on the ball, I want to give this back line overall a big shout out, because I think they did well. And nobody really, I think, in that game overall did poorly. I don't know how you see it, but I think it was a pretty complete team performance. We can rave about Adeyemi, we can rave about Jadon Sancho, but I also thought that Emre Can and Sabitzer played really well, especially where they managed to win possession very often, and the transition Dortmund created out of that. Julian Brandt, obviously, a very good part in that as well, with the way he passed the ball around. So I'm really astounded what this team is capable of, and I think, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think Edin Terzic and his coaching staff deserve huge credit for getting the game plan absolutely right multiple times now in the UEFA Champions League.
Over years, basically, because whenever they are underdogs against these huge sides, they've played Man City quite a bit under Terzic, now PSG a few times. They've usually gotten that right. I think obviously the situation lends itself to Dortmund a bit, because they don't necessarily have the players to absolutely dominate against high quality opposition. But when they can rely on the counter a little bit, move into transitions, have the interventions from Hummels and Schlotterbeck, as we mentioned earlier, I think that just kind of suits what they are as a team. I think it's stupid to make too many comparisons to the Champions League season they had under Klopp in 2013.
Entirely different team, I want to say.
Yeah, but the thing is that back then one of the huge talking points was that Dortmund made the final with I think it was the lowest average possession among all teams who made it out of the group stage, or something like that. So it's obviously not the same. It is a much different team, and pound for pound, probably just a higher quality team now, even if maybe they don't have the superstar in Lewandowski or the budding world-class midfielder in Gündoğan. But it's kind of a similar story in that Dortmund very comfortable against the bigger sides, who maybe underestimate them a little bit. I don't know if PSG listened to everyone say, how the hell is Dortmund in the Champions League semifinals? Look at them in the Bundesliga, they're only
maybe
fifth.
They saw the Leipzig game and were like, okay, this is going to be very easy, when Dortmund absolutely mailed the Leipzig game in.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, PSG played on, maybe it was the same day or was it Sunday, against AZ Le Havre, who are 13th or so in Ligue 1, which, let's be honest, is probably more of a second division at that point in Germany or England or even Spain. And they drew 3-3 and had to postpone their championship celebrations. So it's not like they came into the game on an absolutely buzzing run of form and excitement. I think basically the games ahead of these kinds of huge performances in the Champions League can kind of be forgotten, and Dortmund obviously showed that, because there's no better example for that than looking at the performance of Karim Adeyemi in Leipzig, which was terrible, completely invisible, and then he was tactically perhaps the most important player in the Champions League semi-final. So that's the variance you get in football these days, and obviously Dortmund made the most of it. So do they deserve credit for that? Obviously. They are 90 minutes away from a Champions League final without being probably among the 15 best sides in Europe this season, and that can only work when you do a lot of things right tactically in small decisions and all that.
Yeah, I extremely agree with that. Now, Dortmund obviously, as a bonus, if you will, also qualify for next season's Champions League because that win sealed that Germany will get the 5th spot in the league. And I think mathematically, Dortmund could still lose it because they have a 12-point advantage to Frankfurt. So
in 3 games, I doubt that, Stefan.
Oh, that's right. So you can only get 9 points out of this. Sorry, I don't know what I did there in my head, but as you said on the last episode you were on, that you're not going to do math on the podcast, and that's why. But yeah, so Dortmund have a 12-point advantage over Frankfurt, so Frankfurt cannot in 3 games. Oh, that's right. I was looking at PSG's schedule, and I looked at 4 games that they still have, but one is also the Coupe de France. So yeah. That's why.
Great job all around, Stefan.
Anyhow, Dortmund have qualified for the Champions League. 5th place cannot be taken away from them. That's exactly what I've said. And to me, this is a very interesting story, because on the one hand, Dortmund are responsible for a very poor league run. On the other hand, they do just enough to secure Champions League football for next season. Lars, I don't know if you have looked into it, but I'm intrigued by how much money Dortmund won through their Champions League efforts this season, because I think they managed to wrap up the qualification for the Club World Cup in 2020. Is it also 25 or is it 26? 5. So that would be next year, and then obviously they wrapped up the Champions League qualification via their Champions League play, plus a deep run. I'm sure is pretty valuable as well. Lars, do you have any figure floating around that you've seen of how lucrative this Champions League run has been so far for the Black and Yellows?
I've seen numbers, but they can't be accurate because nobody really knows how much the Club World Cup is going to bring. I mean, there are reports from not necessarily the most reputable of sources that every one of the 32 participating teams is going to cash in at least 50 million just as a entry bonus. I kind of doubt that, because that would throw competitive balance for teams from Africa, Asia, and even I don't know, South America a little bit out of proportion. If I don't know if they even qualified, but let's just say for the sake of the argument, the champions of South Korea make it and they suddenly get a 50 million windfall. That is probably not the best for, is it the K-League?
Yes.
So yeah, it's not confirmed just now how much it is. I think we can safely assume it's going to, all told, the Club World Cup in America in 25, the Champions League entry bonus next season, the 2 additional home games in the group stage. We cannot forget that. It's 8 group games. No, it's 10. Is it 10 group games? And I don't even know.
Well, if it's 2 additional, it needs to be 10, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually 2, but
then it's 1 additional. Again, no math on the yellow wall part.
Well, that's not necessarily math. That's just recall, because I should know this, and I probably have written about it. But I think it's 10 group games, which is kind of hard, because obviously now it's 6, so it might be 8. Anyway, and also this season, because Dortmund always only factor in making it out of the group stage, usually anyway. That's how they write their financial plans for a season. So if we lump all that together and don't take too close a look, I'm sure it's 9 figures. So let's say 120 million, 150, or whatever it ends up being. So it's obviously massive, because we assume that Dortmund will have some squad turnover again, and obviously they don't have many players that can turn into a lot of money. The only option for a big transfer fee is probably Daniel Malen, I think, and I'm hesitant to assume anybody's going to really go deep into their pockets for him, because obviously he's a bit inconsistent. He's injured quite a bit, and he's also not been that integral of a part in the last few weeks of the Champions League run, which obviously the further they go, Dortmund get more exposure internationally. So every bit of money counts. But I never like thinking about these achievements in terms of how much money does that give them, because ultimately they don't play to have more money in the bank or have more opportunity to sign a player additionally or whatever. They play to win the games, as was it Herm Edwards said. So I think it's more important that they are back in the Champions League guaranteed next season, and also that they can treat the 3 last games of the Bundesliga as, I don't know, either ramp up for the semi-final second leg and then fingers crossed a final at Wembley, or maybe just ramp up for the second leg in the semi-finals, and then I don't know, a goodbye for Marco Reus, goodbye for Mats Hummels potentially even. I think it's nice for them to have the rest of the Bundesliga season off, and I can already tell that I absolutely do not give one iota of an F about people complaining whether or not Dortmund have any influence in the fight for Europa with Augsburg on Saturday, or in the relegation battle with Mainz last season, with Mainz on the penultimate match day. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in terms of Mainz, maybe there is a little bit of revenge where...
No.
But I honestly...
There is no revenge because nothing happened against Mainz.
That's correct. But honestly, I'll be honest, I'm really happy about the overall event that happened yesterday. Not just the game, but just, that everyone showed up in yellow. I think that's always beautiful, especially on like a warm day in May. And just to have a Champions League semi-final and something to positively root for. I don't know how you felt about this game while you were watching it, but I was relatively calm. Usually I'm extremely anxious. I was super anxious watching the Atletico tie. But yesterday, to me, it felt more like, yeah, okay, we've made it here. We don't have much to lose, really, and Dortmund will probably win or get a or not lose, at least. That's what I anticipated in this game, and then we'll probably not overcome the second leg anyway. That's sort of my approach. So I was just there to enjoy the ride, and it was a very joyful ride, to be honest. Also, we should probably shout out Niklas Füllkrug because the way he scored the goal is also not not a standard Füllkrug goal. Maybe, I don't know how you saw it, but first of all, he had a very good game overall. I thought the way he passed the ball around, how he fought for long balls, very admirably. But this first touch from the Schlotterbeck pass, and then this very hard but low-driven finish, to me, that was just super sexy and caught me off guard a little bit, just the goalkeeper, because I did not expect for him to have this exact strike. But man, what a striker's finish, and what a iconic, legendary goal for Dortmund and for him personally, obviously.
The only thing it was missing was the sound of the net to reminisce of Erling Haaland against PSG. Obviously, the second leg then also never happened, so that's something. No, as a long-time Füllkrug truther, especially on various social media. No, it's not various. It's actually only Twitter, because everything else I'm too old for. I'm delighted for more people to see the light with Niklas Füllkrug, who is not a superstar. It's not the starting center forward for a usual Champions League semi-finalist, and in an ideal world wouldn't be the borderline guaranteed starter for Borussia Dortmund either. But he's a now 30 or 31-year-old. They bought him when he was 30 or shortly before he turned 30. But anyway, they bought him from Werder Bremen for some below 20 million euros. It's his first Champions League campaign. He's played in the second division just 2.5 years ago, or now 3 years ago. and he's scored in the quarterfinals against Atletico. He scored in semifinals against PSG. He's the first player since Thomas Rositzky to score and assist at least 3 goals in a single Dortmund Champions League campaign, something that, for example, Robert Lewandowski never did. I don't know what people exactly want from him. I mean, as I said, he's not the pinnacle of what center forward for Dortmund can be. But if we take a modicum of context into consideration, he's smashing all expectations that I would have had from him at the start of the season or whenever they bought him, late August. And as they say on Twitter, it's time to put some respect on that name.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Del Piero on CBS had only really good things to say about him.
I mean, he also said he doesn't have that much quality. He's not that strong. He's not that fast, but he gets the job done basically. So it's not. It was a bit of a backhanded compliment, actually. I thought.
Yeah, but he also called him the real deal, and then said that his timing is so good that he makes it work, and that is exactly what he's doing right now. Because yes, he is from an individual skill point, maybe not the best player ever. He's not Robert Lewandowski, that's for sure. But he is as you like to say, serviceable. And he's making the most out of what he's getting right now. Obviously, he could have scored off that really amazing Jadon Sancho should be assist. I don't know if the diving header was offside or not. Something tells me he probably would have scored the header that Marco Reus.
I was just about to say that, because you can always tell by the reaction whether someone is just angry that the other player took the ball off him, or if he actually thinks he would have scored. And Phil Cook 100% thought he would have scored that.
Yeah,
could see it in his face.
Yeah, it was a bit annoying. Also, Marco Reus wasting a header also brings me back to the game that actually never happened. So, anyway, do you want to talk about the post-game statements by Mats Hummels and Jadon Sancho, as such, that Mats Hummels was talking about his future and saying that he is still letting everything open for a decision to make later on? I think there's not much to discuss, because everything he said. So basically, it's a wait and see scenario. Do you believe, though, that he will extend his contract at Dortmund, or do you think he'll probably call it quits?
I mean, to be honest, the vibe I'm getting, the rumblings in the Asian community, or however that would be translated, seems to be that he's not going to end his career either way. So I hope he's extending at Dortmund. I don't know what else he would be doing. Maybe he and Reus both go to MLS for a year, even though Hummels, seeing as he isn't with the mother of his child anymore, that might be a bit more difficult, because obviously he can't be around his kid, who's also going to be attending school for the first time in Munich this summer. I deep down, I think he's going to extend, because it would just be a waste for him not to extend and keep playing at this level. And obviously, I think if it's not at Dortmund, I don't see another top side signing a 35.5-year-old centre back. It's Dortmund or something crazy, I guess, and then it should be Dortmund, because he's too good to do something crazy.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I can only hope that he extends for another season, because I have very little trust in Niklas Süle right now, and I think him and Schlotterbeck are a really good center-back pairing, and I believe that Mats Hummels will not really have a big drop-off next season. Obviously, at this age, you can hit a wall all of a sudden, and that's that. But to me, it doesn't look like this is going to be the case. And as for Jadon Sancho, he was obviously also asked on that really interesting CBS Champions League post-game interview with Jamie Carragher being relatively drunk after spending the game on the yellow wall, which to some might be cringe, but I actually kind of liked it. But obviously he was asked, and he said that he's fully focused on the present now. I obviously both Hummels and Sancho also are still, trying to get a spot for the Euros this summer. But talking about him having to put focus on the present now, Lars, he obviously now showed the world what Jadon Sancho is capable of, but he also showed the world what Jadon Sancho is capable of in the Borussia Dortmund shirt, contrasting what he's maybe not capable of in the Manchester United shirt. What do you think this performance from Sancho does for him now personally, and how do you think the process for Dortmund is now going to be? Should they try even harder now to make him a permanent fixture going forward?
To be honest, I think it makes zero difference for him personally, because I think he's always been aware that he still has it, because he's what, 24 years old, is it? Or is it still 23? I don't even know. He has the same birthday as my mother, but I don't know the year.
He's 24.
Yeah. Obviously, because he had his birthday already this year. I should have maths again. I think for him personally, I don't see him as the kind of player who needs a big performance to remind him of his qualities and to gain more self-belief and all that. I think he has that in him. I think he's the kind of player who, if 5 take-ons don't work, he still tries the 6th, just because that's the kind of player he is. So I don't think that makes a huge difference. The difference to me, obviously, is in terms of Dortmund's ability to put a package together that might entice Manchester United. Be that on another 1-year loan, which I think is probably preferable for Dortmund, because they don't want to package a huge wage number with a high transfer fee, because even if they make 9 figures from all the stuff we talked about earlier, you don't want to put 60 or 70 odd million over 3-4 years in one player. And they obviously have a number of squad planning issues to go through. I think Maatsen being perhaps even more pressing than Sancho, also because there's a release clause in his Chelsea contract, so it's a bit easier to calculate what you have to do to keep Maatsen, who's also on much lower wages, I'm assuming. Should they try even harder? No, they should have tried hard before, because it's quite obvious that Sancho and Dortmund are a perfect fit, and if they can keep him around in any capacity, they should do that, because he's quite obviously doing very well at Dortmund. He's feeling the love, the support. He knows he needs to keep in line also. I think obviously at Dortmund there have never been too many disciplinary issues with him. More perhaps lacks of maturity with coming late a bit and all that, but we haven't heard any of that since his return. I think he's very much focused on football. I like that he doesn't, dangle the carrot in front of Dortmund fans and say, I want to say, let's see what the clubs can do. He says, no, I want to focus on right now, do the final 5, let's hope 6 games, or no, the final 4, let's hope 5 games of the season. And then I don't think he's going to the Euros. I think England have too stacked a squad for a late returner like him, but the clubs will figure something out, and unless Erik ten Hag leaves Manchester United, I think it's pretty safe to say that Sancho is not returning there, and that's good for him, and I think we can all be happy for him, even if he doesn't stay at Dortmund, that he doesn't have to go back to a fairly toxic situation as Manchester United.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And what this game showed to me one more time is that if Dortmund managed to keep him for around for a bit longer, I think that he will probably match his old form. Unlike, for example, Shinji Kagawa, who returned, and who obviously was still good when he returned, but I feel like he wasn't quite as good as before his return. And with Jadon Sancho, I feel like with maybe a whole summer preparation and so on and so forth, I think he will really catch his form again, because that player certainly is in there. And we've seen it yesterday. Obviously, as for Karim Adeyemi, who was really good yesterday, I would just hope that that he takes some inspiration from his own performance and shows what he did a bit more often. because there's certainly a really good player in him too that Dortmund, that can really make a lot of difference for Dortmund. And as for Daniel Malen, I really hope he returns for the second leg, because having someone like him, maybe even just off the bench, would be obviously hugely beneficial. Last real quick, I don't know if you want to talk about the second leg right now, or just about the Augsburg game in terms of rotation. We already mentioned that PSG don't really have a midweek game because they postponed theirs. However, Dortmund do play against Augsburg, but as we both analyzed, the league is relatively irrelevant to Dortmund now. Is it going to be a 100% rotation, or do you expect some starters from the Champions League game to feature in Augsburg as well?
I think they will want to keep up appearances. It's a home game.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's home versus Augsburg, then at Mainz, and then to close out the year home versus Darmstadt. So I have a hard time believing that. I mean, full rotation would basically mean like Papadopoulos at centre half, for example. I think Kobel, Schlotterbeck, maybe Emre Can. I mean, Kobel, goalkeepers don't really get injured during games, and Kobel, when he's missed games, it's usually been after mystery injuries during final training sessions or whatever. Schlotterbeck, centre back isn't the most taxing. Unless he's suspended, is there any suspensions in the team that I'm unaware of right now?
I have no idea. I was watching the Leipzig game with one eye, to be honest. So
yeah, so basically the same as I. Certainly for the second half.
I think he picked up his fourth yellow, and Jadon Sancho picked up his first, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the rest, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a heavy rotation for all the guys that put in extra shifts. So, Riasson had cramps, Martzen had to be taken out, Adeyemi, I probably could have been substituted 20 minutes earlier and still be completely knackered. So I'm sure it's going to be borderline full rotation, but with, the here and there couple of players staying in the team to keep up appearances, because it's a home game, because it's for Augsburg, the league isn't completely over. I said earlier, I don't care about, Wettbewerbsverzerrung, as we say in German, but maybe they do. So, yeah, it's not going to be 11 changes from Wednesday, I don't think.
Well, here's my hope that Bino Gittens gets a start. I hope that Daniel Malen and Sebastian Aller, who are back in training, feature a little bit, just to get some match rhythm and maybe some match practice before that game, because my assumption is that they will feature, and Yusufa Mokoko I hope will get a start as well, because as you said, hardworking guys, and I think Niklas Füllkrug absolutely worked his tail off in this first leg. So yeah, that is my sort of prediction now for that game. Everything needs to happen in light of the return leg, and the result and outcome of the Augsburg game, to me personally, it does not really matter whatsoever. Obviously, a win is always nice, and you want to keep that feeling, but as you saw with the 4-1 loss to Leipzig, it did not really affect Dortmund's performance in the Champions League whatsoever. And so I want to keep it that way, let's say. And if there's any stupid injury that a Dortmund player who is a starter picks up, I would be endlessly annoyed. And that is something we don't want. So we'll not do that. So yeah, I expect Felix Metscher in the starting lineup. I expect Marius Wolf in the starting lineup, etc. Maybe even a few young guns. I don't care if Terzic plays Kjellvitchen or whatever, go for it. I don't care. But yeah, Lars, maybe your final thoughts on the Champions League night Dortmund just had, and I think we can get out of here.
I have no more thoughts that we haven't discussed already.
All right. Then, as always, everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and goodbye.